The Elder Scrolls Online is a controversial game within the community. Although ESO has improved a lot since its launch in 2014, it still remains something of a taboo. The main question I want to ask in this video is the Elder Scrolls Online a true Elder Scrolls game? There are inevitably many sub-questions underlying this, which I'll be dealing with in turn, but I think that fundamentally my position is that ESO is a good MMORPG, but a bad Elder Scrolls game. I've talked before about why I think ESO is a game that people should at least try, because I do believe that it's actually a good game. Its leveling, class system, graphics, music and PvP are all on point. ESO nails all the good aspects of an MMORPG, but that being said, ESO is limited by its genre. It is an MMORPG, not an RPG. There are also other choices that the developers, Zenimax, made that make the game feel like it has little in common with its single player cousins. So let's get into it. ESO is limited by its nature as an MMO for a few reasons. Firstly, a multiplayer atmosphere spoils the ethos of the universe. Oblivion, Morrowind and Skyrim are somber, intimate games where you're left to your own devices. You are the hero and it's up to you to do the right thing. There's a burden of responsibility that helps to immerse you into the universe. This isn't an ethos present in ESO because you're one of millions. On a practical level, other players spoil the atmosphere, the constant chat, the guilds, the trolls. It's just harder to be immersed in a multiplayer game. Furthermore, Zenimax made design choices that render ESO more PG and less dark than its cousins. Having played ESO, I get the sense that it's less complex, less story driven and less morally ambiguous. I think that this atmosphere was created purposefully by creating a more accessible game that's less intimidating to those not familiar with the lore. Zenimax could ultimately sell more copies, which they have done. It's completely understandable, but compared to Skyrim, Morrowind and Oblivion, ESO comes across as vacuous. Let me give you an example. ESO's main quest has no moral ambiguity. You are simply a hero, one of many, whose task it is to stop Molag Bal's invasion of Nirn. Oblivion has a very similar story, ostensibly. Your task is to stop Mehrunes Dagon's invasion. However, the difference is in the antagonists. In Oblivion, Mehrunes Dagon is nominally the main antagonist, but in reality it's Mankar Cameron, who is far from being simply evil. Like any good antagonist, he has an understandable point of view. He acts the way he does because he believed the divines were genuinely useless gods. And it's true, they are pretty docile. Equally, he points out that Nirn is not really the divines' plane, it's Lorcan's. He sees the divines as betrayers, backstabbers, and ultimately as two-faced beings, and this isn't an unsubstantiated interpretation. I've dedicated a whole video to this if you're interested. By comparison, Manamako and Molag Bal are unambiguously insidious and evil. Molag Bal just wants to dominate Nirn, whilst Manamako schemes to use the Amulet of Kings to capture Molag Bal's essence and take his place as a god. I think that this points to a wider issue that many of the fans of the main games have with ESO, that it feels too happy and PG. The main underlying issue seems to me to be immersion. ESO values quantity over quality. It has the most quests of any Elder Scrolls game by far, but having sunk 70 or 80 hours into ESO, I find it hard to remember any of them. When I think of Skyrim, two quests really pop up in my mind. Sanguine's quest, A Night to Remember, where you go drinking around Skyrim's various taverns and eventually marry a Hagraven, as well as the daunting quest, The Wolf Queen Awakened. Equally, when I think of Oblivion, the Shivering Isles DLC, with its twists and turns, is first in my mind. And when I cast my mind back to Morrowind, I remember most clearly its main quest, the fight against the insidious but understandable Dagoth-Ur. Like Oblivion, Morrowind was a game clouded in moral ambiguity. The Tribunal were, in many ways, just as bad as Dagoth, so it was difficult to take a side. ESO has no such memorable quests, and the quests that I've mentioned from Skyrim, Oblivion and Morrowind are just the tip of the iceberg. They're just the ones that come to mind. Fundamentally, the quests are critical to any decent RPG. In the Elder Scrolls, they are the medium that provides the impetus to the game. Without good storylines, well-developed characters and intimate moments, an emotional connection to the game can't possibly be forged. This is why I personally struggle with ESO. I never felt attached to any characters because there were so many of them. I never engaged with a quest emotionally because they seemed comparatively thoughtless. The main impetus to progress in ESO is gaining XP and improving one's character rather than seeing the main plot to its conclusion. Quests are simply a means to advance your player level. They are not just ends in themselves as they are in the other main Elder Scrolls games. Contributing to this superficial Elder Scrolls ethos is ESO's in-game transactions. I know that we now have the Creation Club with Fallout 4 and Skyrim, but this comes nowhere near to the level of microtransactions in ESO. Skins, XP packs, mounts, I can see why this game is a cash cow for the company. This also makes it feel much less like an Elder Scrolls game. When I think Elder Scrolls, I don't think of grinding for experience with an XP booster. As I said before, it's kind of understandable why these practices are in ESO. It's commonplace for MMORPGs, but I just don't think the Elder Scrolls universe is well suited to an MMORPG considering its grounding in in-depth single-player games. Also, due to ESO's emphasis on interaction with other players, the NPCs are naturally less developed. Take Lyris Titanborn, the Nord strongwoman who's supposed to be one of your chief companions. I appreciate that Zenimax does attempt to give her something of a backstory. It's shown that she harbours guilt for having killed her mother in childbirth, and she was ostracised in the past due to partially being a giant. But for me, she comes nowhere near to a comparable character in Oblivion like Martin Septim. Martin's dialogue perfectly captured and explained his character. His confusion, his imposter syndrome, and bravery are all self-evident. Take his speech on the steps of Cloud Ruler Temple, or your initial conversation with him in Kvatch. By comparison, Lyris Titanborn has very little unique dialogue that fleshes out her character. Feelings of grief and being big-boned are hardly the makings of a well-developed NPC. I haven't argued that ESO is a bad game, let me reiterate, but I think that it's a poor Elder Scrolls game. The Elder Scrolls series is known for its imagination, complexity, and emotional depth. ESO is not a good game for the same reasons. It excels at being an MMORPG, for which there are other criteria. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.